everyone. This is Julia from the Massachusetts Public Library. Today we have a copycat recipe that I'm going to show you. So I was just thinking people can't go into the mall yet at this point. And so what's one kind of food that's at the mall that I love, and I think lots of other people do too, and that's the Auntie Anne's pretzels. Those warm pretzels, you can get them with the butter and the salt. You can get them with cheese dipping, which I love. You can get them with the cinnamon sugar, which is our director's favorite, I think Stacy's favorite. So I took a copycat recipe for the pretzels and I did it 2 ways. And I did it on a very hot day. So you're going to see a little bit more. I don't normally wear tank tops, but I was wearing tank top because we don't have air conditioning. So you're going to see a little bit more of my arm than you normally do. And I apologize for that, but it kept me going. So let me share my screen and I will talk you through it. And then at the end, I'll come back and give you the recipe. So, nope, there we go. Share screen. Here's the video. You know what? I'm going to stop that because I think there's something I needed to click first for video. Optimize for video clip. There we go. All right, so now play. All right, so this is the yeast dough. So we start out with some warm milk. I microwaved it for about 1.5 minutes in the microwave. And this recipe just calls for brown sugar. So a tablespoon of brown sugar at the beginning in the warm milk. And then I think it was 1.5 tablespoons of active dry yeast, which I still have. And again, this was a very hot, very humid day. And apparently that was perfect for the yeast. The yeast loved this. This dough has grown more than any dough I've worked with recently. Same yeast. So this is after 10 minutes. You let it sit and get frothy and bubbly for 10 minutes. And then I used sorry for the autofocus. I used my mixer for this. You could use like a hand mixer, or you could just stir it by hand. It would just take longer. So you start with that mix, the frothy mix. You add the rest, that's 5 tablespoons of brown sugar, and then some melted butter. I believe 4 tablespoons of melted butter. And then I think I started with a cup of flour. It's 4.5 cups of flour total, but I started with a cup of flour and then 2 teaspoons of regular table salt. Put on my dough hook and mixed it up. Sorry, I tried to, at the beginning I was very focused on where my hands were, not trying to cover the camera, and then by the end all bets were off. So as that's mixing in, then I just added the rest of the flour a little bit at a time. Oh, there goes the salt. You don't want to add the salt too close to the yeast because it could actually kill the yeast. The sugar feeds it and the salt kills it. So you want to have a little bit more flour buffer. So, yep, adding in all the flour. After I moved the mixer at the end, I realized that there was some of that flour ended up on the counter. And there are times, I also have a slide at the end where you can learn some of the tips or suggestions for things that didn't work so well for me that I would try next time. One of them is I think I would have gone a little bit more, maybe just because of the heat and humidity, probably would have put in a little bit more than 4.5 cups of flour. And then because I had the dough hook on there, I let it do this kneading thing for 10 minutes. So I skipped ahead. At the end of the 10 minutes, you can see it's a very elastic, very stretchy dough. It didn't ball up. It didn't say that it needed to ball up. I think if it had more flour, it would have, but it's very stretchy. Yeah, it was nice and gooey and all of that. So just removing it out of there, and then it's gonna go into an oiled bowl to rise for an hour. So I started it, so I just a spray oil, so I didn't actually like wipe down the bowl. This is my standard go-to. It's a 12-cup mixing bowl that I use a lot. You've seen it before if you've watched my cooking videos. I started with that. I kind of scraped it in there. I sprayed the top of it again a little bit with spray oil, and then I covered it with a napkin and put it aside. Oh, after I sprayed it, put it aside. Halfway through the hour, I checked, and it had grown above the top. it just fed really well. So, oh, I'm gonna pause it at this point. So then I moved it to another bowl because I needed a bigger, wider bowl. So when you see the dough again, it's going to be in a big silver bowl. It's what we normally make salads in. Okay, so while that was rising, I'm making up this cream cheese dip for the cinnamon sugar donuts. So that's what I'm doing now. I washed out the bowl while it's rising. Let's do this in the meantime. So this is 4 ounces of cream cheese and 2 tablespoons of butter. Now this is cream cheese that I had, like a block of cream cheese that I had in the freezer. So when it defrosted, it was the texture was a little different, but it worked just fine. I had extras. I think I probably got it at BJ's, like a multi-pack, and we didn't use it all, so I put some in the freezer. So I get to see what it's like. So to this, I'm adding a cup of powdered sugar and a little bit of vanilla. I never measure my vanilla. I probably should. It's just a little pour. And then whip it up again. I've got the whipping blade there. And then to this, I add 2 tablespoons of heavy cream, which is a lovely thing. I am thankfully not lactose intolerant. Heavy cream is awesome. That's what I like in my tea. Just like such a nice treat. Very expensive, but it's a nice treat. Okay, so then that you whip up for 2 minutes. So at the end, that's what you get. So adding the cream to it really does give you the whippy texture. But if you're not going to be using it right away, and if it's a really hot day like it was, put it in the refrigerator until you're ready to use it, or it's going to be all melted. Okay, so here is the risen dough. This is after the hour. I take 3 cups of very warm water and stir in 1/3 cup of baking soda. So this is what you're going to dip the pretzel dough in before you bake it. That's what helps give the crispy outside. So it had deflated a little bit, but it had definitely risen way beyond. So that's the dough. And it looks okay, but it's still rather wet. And I specifically I looked at many recipes. They were mostly the same. And they were saying, do not roll this on a floured surface. Maybe an oiled surface, but not a floured surface. I have a marble countertop, which is lovely, by the way. And that's what was in the house when we moved here. So I take the dough, divide it in half. I ended up putting half of it back in the bowl and covered up with a towel again before I was able to get to it, because it just makes a lot of dough. So this is just half of that dough. Try and cut it into roughly, well, 6 pieces, I guess. I ended up with 7. And as I'm working with this, you're going to see this is my favorite. This is hard for me to watch. It was really miserable. You're supposed to make ropes out of it and then cutting. They're like pretzel bites. I thought I want to do the bites rather than having to work with the twisting and all of that. And it was just very sticky. And I even went through and I oiled the countertop and I tried different things. Eventually, in the end, I did end up flouring the surface, and I think that was a little better for the second half of the dough. I didn't show it on camera because I think there needed to be more flour to begin with. So I even used my whatever bench scraper or whatever that's called to cut, just trying different things. Okay, so once you have them in the pieces, like 1.5 inches pieces, that's when you dip it. And see, this is when my hand is in the way. I dip it in that baking soda water and you put it on the tray. I didn't think to make sure that the camera was seeing the baking tray. I'm using my Silpat liners for one of them. The other tray I put just parchment paper, something. So this is what it looks like after it was baked. So let me pause that again. So you dip it in the baking soda water and you put it on the tray. And then before you bake it, I sprinkled it with some coarse salt. The first batch I used coarse salt. The second batch I used a coarse kosher salt. So it was finer texture, but still bigger than table salt. So this is with that, just that really coarse kind of rocky salt, directly out of the oven. So you bake it at where's those notes? 450-degree oven for about 6 to 10 minutes. I think those went for 8 in my oven, which is pretty good with the heat. So for the cinnamon sugar, you dip it in butter. So that's a stick of butter that's been melted in the microwave. Again, my hand is in the way, and I just lost it. After so many hours in a hot kitchen, I was focusing on what I was doing and not what the camera would see. So that's all that is that those are the pretzels that had come out of the oven, and I just dipped them in butter. You let them sit for 2 minutes. So this is the ones that were the dip. Is that the dip? Yes. So that's after they rested. So then I took those and then I just dunked them and spread around the cinnamon sugar to get that cinnamon sugar bit to it. So there's the whole tray of those. That's like maybe a third of the whole batch. So here's me at the end, and I forgot and I cut out the sound, and otherwise you could hear me. So there's the dip. I'm trying one. This is the cinnamon sugar. I dip it in there. It's really good. In the background, you can see the second tray that I did just savory. So that's really good. Thumbs up. Okay, and you can see how hot I really was. Very melty that day. Okay, so stop share. So that was the process. It took I think we started it at 10 or 10:30 in the morning, and it went until we were probably still working, because then I had to do the rest of the dough and all of that. It was probably 2 o'clock. It was a long time. It was a lot of work, but it was really good. So now let me share the recipe. Is that right? I don't need to optimize. Okay. So here we have, this is, you can see the dark ones are the cinnamon sugar, and then there's the dip in the middle. And then the tray to the left is the ones that I just left with just the butter and salt, just for the savory. And I did take up some of the dough at the end, and I rolled it as much as I could to make like a regular pretzel, and it's still puffed up. I just couldn't get the rope thin enough without breaking, because I think it needed more flour. The other difference that I did is the ones that were the savory, instead of dipping them all in sugar, I just brushed the tops with melted butter. I'm sorry, not sugar. Yes, with butter. I didn't dip them in butter. I brushed the tops with melted butter so that they didn't get quite as soft. Because the cinnamon sugar, you kind of want them soft and pillowy, and the other ones, we thought it would be better to be a little stiffer on the outside, so that then you could dip it in cheese or mustard or whatever else you wanted to do. Okay, so here is the ingredients that you need for the pretzels. So again, you start off with 2 cups of warmed milk. I used a microwave for 1.5 minutes. I have I think maybe a 700-watt microwave. It's not very powerful. You could also warm it up on the stove if you wanted. I think you don't want it any higher than 110, but I'm not sure where I'm getting that information besides my brain. So you might want to look that up. But you want it to be warm enough that you feel the warmth, but you don't want it to be too hot that it's going to kill the yeast when you put it in. So like stick your finger in it. If your finger feels, oh, that's warm, but not like, ouch, then that's probably okay. To that, you add the 1.5 tablespoons of active dry yeast. I think maybe that is 2 packages. I don't know. I get my yeast in a jar. So I use 1.5 tablespoons. And then at that time, you just use 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, but altogether you're going to use 6 tablespoons. That's what you let sit for 10 minutes. Then it comes in the 4 tablespoons of melted butter, the 4.5 cups of all-purpose flour. I would say 4.5 to 5, and that probably it will depend upon the day. I think I should have probably used 5. And then 2 teaspoons of regular table salt. Once that's all baked, that's when you need the 3 cups of warm water. Again, you could microwave it. You don't want it to be boiling, but you want it to be quite warm. Our tap water gets pretty hot, so I just used that. Plus, again, it was a warm day. So you take that and you put in 1/3 cup of baking soda to dissolve, and you just kind of stir it around. If it takes longer as you are dipping it in, you can always microwave your water in between to just make sure that it stays warm, because I guess that helps the dough to absorb the baking soda, which gives it more of that outside nice crust. Coarse salt is for sprinkling on before you bake it if you want. Of course, that's optional. The 8 tablespoons or a stick of melted butter at the end to brush on or to dip the pretzels in. And then if you wanted to do the cinnamon sugar, 1/2 cup of sugar, a tablespoon of cinnamon, whatever to your liking. If you want it to be more cinnamony, you can do that. So that is all the ingredients for just the pretzel parts. And here's the instructions. Like I've been saying, warm it in the microwave, warm enough for your finger. Add in the yeast and the brown sugar. Let it sit for 10 minutes to get bubbly and frothy. Again, you could let it sit a little bit longer if it's a colder day, but I didn't have that problem. Then you pour it into a large mixing bowl. For me, I added it into the mixing bowl of my mixer. And then you add the melted butter, some of the flour, the salt. You start to mix and knead it in. You get in all the rest of the flour a little bit at a time. Knead that for about 10 minutes. If you didn't do it in a mixer, you know, then you'd stir it together and then mix it, knead it by hand for about 10 minutes. I think that's definitely, you'd be adding much more flour to it then. Place dough in a bowl, cover it, allow it to rise for 1 hour. Preheat oven to 450. So yes, so that's the temperature. Divide dough into roughly 12 pieces, roll out into ropes, and cut into 1.5-inch pieces. Not so easy. It wasn't so easy for me, but hopefully your experience will be different. Or you could make it into, if you just divide it into the 12 pieces, you could make 12 really big pretzels if that would work for you to roll it out. That's when you mix the water with the baking soda. You dip it in the baking soda, then put it on the baking tray. If you were going to make it into pretzels, I tried this with the one that I did, and I've read about this too. You can, once you have your rope of pretzel dough, here we go, rope of pretzel dough, you could dip that into the water and then actually form it, you know, roll it and twist it into the pretzel shape while it is on the baking tray then. So don't make it into a pretzel, then try and dip that loose pretzel shape into the water because it's probably going to come undone. And then bake it after you sprinkle with salt if you want, 6 to 10 minutes. Dip or brush with melted butter, do the cinnamon sugar if you want, and of course they are recommended to eat them while they're warm. That's how you would get it in the mall. They would be under heat lamps, or they would be, you know, you'd be lucky enough and get them when they're fresh. So here's the whipped cream cheese dip that I showed also in the middle. So that's 4 ounces of cream cheese, which is like half a block, and 2 tablespoons of butter softened, which, you know, took like 5 minutes in the house that day. So whip that all together, add in the cup of powdered sugar and a little bit of vanilla if you want, and then whip in the 2 tablespoons of heavy cream, about 2 minutes until it's fluffy, and then set it aside, refrigerate it if it's really hot, or just have melted dip, that's okay too. And this is what I've learned. So this will take longer than you think, even if you read the recipes. And so, so here I have some printouts of the different examples. And it says altogether the prep time was 10 minutes, the cook time was 50 minutes, the total time an hour. That was not true for me. It was absolutely not true for me. And then of course, then there's all the cleanup that went with it. Another one says prep time 45 minutes, cook time 10 minutes, which it takes, well, for the baking, I guess. Total time 2 hours 35. Well, that was closer to it. I would say closer to 3.5 hours for me, but maybe that's just because it's me. And we were messing around with the camera too and trying to get the shots, and I don't know. So maybe that was part of it. So it will take longer than you think. One of the recommendations that I saw, it's like, oh, this is a great after-school treat you can make for your kids when they come home from school. I'm thinking, whoa, those are some pretty special kids. I would say it's something that you would do together as a family. I have at the very bottom of here what I learned. It was very yummy, but the amount of work suggests that the recipe is for special occasions or supreme pretzel enthusiasts. So it is, if you've ever gotten the frozen soft pretzels that you can get at the grocery store and put them in the oven, those are good, right? Those are good. They serve the purpose. These were better because they're softer and they're fresh, and the dough was really, it had a good flavor. Of course, you're not supposed to eat raw flour, but you know, you get a little on your finger and you eat it. It's a good tasting dough. It was nice and elasticy. But it was a lot of work. So it's not something, it's maybe something I would do maybe once, twice a year, but it's nothing I would do like on a whim. Okay, and do not attempt on a very hot day if you don't have air conditioning. Just off the top, those were what I learned. The dough might have been a little easier to work with if it had more flour in it. I don't know if you change, like if you use some bread flour instead of all-purpose flour, I don't know how that would change things, but maybe it would be something to try. If you want a firmer crust, bake it on the longer side, so bake it for 9 to 10 minutes instead. If you want it to be softer, 6 would have been fine. And then for the savory pretzels, I recommend just brushing the tops with butter instead of dipping all of it, because dipping it really did make it a softer pretzel all over for the crust. So I think that's what I had for that. Let me go back. So here I am. So normally when I've done cooking, it's like, gee, I wish I could have saved something, but my family ate it all up. We still actually have some of the savory ones, but the sweet ones are all gone. I'm going to show you, I put some aside. So see, these are the donuts that I have left over. I took 3 of each kind. So I have the cinnamon sugar with some dip, and then some just this, and the butter has kind of shriveled up. I re-dipped them in some butter, and then the salt you can't see. But I did also put them in the fridge because it's been so hot, and with the butter, I didn't know. So I don't know. I heated them up in the toaster oven because I have a toaster oven. They said you can do it in the microwave for a couple seconds, just something because you want them warm. They're not really warm anymore, but definitely with a microwave, they're not going to be. I don't know. It's not warm. It's been sitting here 20 minutes, but it still tastes good, and it's still better than the frozen kind of pretzels that you would get. No, these need the savory, not sweet. Really could have used to be toasted a little bit. So there you go. Those were the Copycat Pretzels. If you were interested, give them a try. It was good. I think that this could be fun, like if you had a group of kids together, or you had your family together and you wanted to do something different, and it was a cooler day, or if you had air conditioning in your house. It's something to try because it is really good. You really taste the difference. And you can't get to them all to buy them. And this would be much cheaper than it would cost to buy enough for a family. So that's really good. We actually ended up having the savory ones for dinner that night. It was a hot day. So we did that. We heated up some nacho cheese sauce, and that's what we mostly had for dinner. It was enough, and we drank lots and lots and lots of water. But it was good. So yeah, give it a try. And next week, we're gonna do a Copycat recipe, but we're gonna go with our blender this time, and we're going to do some Copycat beverages. So I'm thinking maybe some smoothies or like an iced coffee drink or something. So even though next week is supposed to be cooler, we're going to do cooler recipes. I should have flip-flopped them, but I didn't know. So there you go. I hope you enjoy the recipe and enjoy your week ahead, and I will see you later. Bye.